Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, citizens of Tampa. A special workshop reference the budget for August 16th, 2021 will now come to order. Before we begin with our roll call, I'd like to have a brief moment of silence for those who are suffering with this dreaded COVID-19 disease that's come upon us. A lot of our children in our schools have been inflicted with this treacherous virus and disease this time. And of course, the folks in Haiti who are suffering at this time. And I tell you, that country has really been through so many devastating changes. It's unbelievable. So if you would just bear with us, give us a moment of silence, and then we'll have a pledge of allegiance afterwards. Thank you. Amen. Will you please stand for the pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Carlson. Here. Maniscalco.
Here.
Dingfelder. Here. Citro. Here. Vieira. Here. Miranda. And Goods.
Goose is here. For the record, Mr. Miranda did submit a memo to my office that he be absent this evening.
And we have a physical quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Shelby, could you go over the guidelines for this evening's process?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Good evening, Council. This special call budget workshop is being conducted with a live in-person quorum of the City Council President and Council chambers. However, in light of the continuing COVID-19 concerns and government-issued health standards or guidance in effect, members of the public have the opportunity and the ability to participate virtually through what is referred to by Florida statutes and rules as Communications Media Technology, or CMT. Now, the purpose of this special call meeting is to discuss the City of Tampa fiscal year 2022 budget and capital improvement plan. Please note that the public will be invited to comment following the discussion of this workshop, subject to the time limitations set by City Council. The public and the citizens of the City of Tampa are able to watch, listen, and view this meeting on Spectrum Channel 640, Frontier Channel 15, and on the internet at tampa.gov/live stream. Now, the members of the public have had the opportunity to communicate to you by written comments on the internet or web, by email, by U.S. mail, and all of that information is available on the City Council's webpage, tampa.gov/City Council, one word. And also those who have pre-registered, following those instructions, will have the opportunity to participate remotely by audio tonight. Just a couple of reminders, Council. First of all, I'm going to ask Council by motion and vote to adopt the guidelines and for tonight's meeting, which are contained in the agenda and on the notice that has been posted. So, motion, please.
First, or move, whatever.
Mr. Vieira has motioned to move Mr. Shelby's request. Mr. Maniscalco has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
And last, Mr. Chairman, you will note that Councilmember Carlson is participating remotely tonight, and pursuant to Council's regular rules, in order to permit him to do so, that would require a motion and vote of Council.
So moved.
Mr. Vieira has moved. Mr. Maniscalco seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you all.
Gentlemen, as you might have known, I had asked Mr. Shelby, I had not put out a memo, but I did ask Mr. Shelby until we can get some more updates on the virus, because I was looking at the news just a few minutes ago. Well, we can't decipher from a common cold from someone who may have a cough, who may have the virus. So just for abundance of caution in chambers now, we'll ask that you kind of wear your mask in chambers. That way we make sure we keep ourselves safe. We need us here to be able to serve the people. So I would just ask that. I can't make you do that, but I'm asking you as the chairman to kind of follow those guidelines, if you would, gentlemen. If there's any discussion on it, I'll hear it, but Citro, anything on that, sir? Mr. Scalco.
Point. I know we should have all received an email regarding the school board calling an emergency
Yes.
meeting because of, I think, several thousand students are either in quarantine or in isolation because of exposure to COVID. So it's a wise decision of what you brought up.
Mr. Vieira?
Oh, no objection here. I just wish that every person would do the right thing and get their COVID vaccination. If we do that, we move forward as a country. So.
Mr. Shelby, anything, sir?
No, but I have extra masks available for those who would need them. Thank you.
And just one other thing to close it out, gentlemen, the city and the county have opened up several parks now. I know right in the heart of East Tampa, I believe Al Barnes Park is a site for testing, Al Lopez as well. So don't be afraid. Go do what you have to do to make sure you're safe, your family's safe, co-workers and so forth, so we can kind of beat this deadly virus. And again, thank you for your cooperation, gentlemen, and the public. All right, we'll go in and get into agenda item number 1. The maker of the motion is not here as of yet. Do we have anybody on the second floor or virtually to speak this evening? We have 2 registered. All right, well, I'll go with the 2 registered now. Mr. Shelby, no, Ms. Shelby, point of order?
In this case, counsel, when the motion was made, it is best to be able just to have the discussion, take the presentation, then take the public comment.
All right, all
Thank you.
right. I'll open up for discussion. I'll go Mr. Vieira first.
I just wanted to briefly talk about some of the, and I guess the purpose of this meeting is to what? Discuss the budget, correct?
That's correct.
And for me, and I want to make darn sure you're requesting that we keep our masks on when we talk, correct?
No, if you need to take a talk, I'm just saying, as long as we have kind of in the general vicinity, we're fine.
Okay, thank you, because I
Yes, sir.
always hate that. My glasses fog up.
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Vieira?
Yes, sir.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, there is a point that I would like to make for council, and that applies to this special called budget workshop. Again, because this relates to the budget, we especially have to be sure that we comply with Florida statutes, that we dot all our i's and cross all our t's.
Mm-hmm.
So with regard to any motions that council may even contemplate after public comment, my suggestion would be that there would be no official action taken to amend the budget.
Mm-hmm.
That would be done best at the first
Yeah.
public hearing related to the budget. But if you have any questions that cannot be answered, you can ask for an information item to be brought back at the first public hearing, or maybe at another date if that's what council prefers. Also, if there are any things that council believes might be a decision point, rather than taking it action today, to at least have a note of that made, so it's in the minutes and the administration's aware of it, and then when the council comes back into public hearing, those items could be brought back. But with regard to taking any action to amend the budget, the recommendation is to avoid doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Shelby. Mr. Vieira, you can continue, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to talk about some of my, budget priorities that I think we all share, that I think are so important to make sure that we have in this budget. One of the things that the administration made use of was talking about a public safety master plan for our city of Tampa. A couple years ago, I started using that term as it applies to public safety. There were talks on a public safety, or strike that, a master plan for Parks and Recreation, that is taking a look at all of our city and seeing where we have deficits in Parks and Recreation, and then coming up with a unified approach. And my thought was, why don't we do that for public safety, both for police and fire, with the contemplation that public safety is the most important issue that we have here in the budget. I think we're all united in the fact that we have major challenges right now with Tampa Fire Rescue. So, seeing the adoption of a public safety master plan idea, I think is a really, really good thing. It goes without saying. Something that we've been talking about here for a really, really long time. One of the things, and I beat this drum relentlessly, is Fire Station 13, which, that station, I can't emphasize that enough, is just in a constant crisis. Station 13 is by far and away, and I'll just go over the statistics again because I think they're so damning, and they're stats that the men and women who work there live with every single day. I did a work day with them a couple of weeks ago. to see it up close. They're the busiest fire station here in the city of Tampa by far and away. The second busiest fire station is 11, and there's a 25% gap in calls between 13 and 11, so it's not even close. And even though Station 13 is 1 out of 23 stations, they take up about its region, 1 out of 7 callers in the city of Tampa. And Station 13 is not only the busiest station in the city of Tampa, but it's also the 13th busiest engine and the 54th busiest ladder in the United States of America. So, this is something that really needs to be reflected in the budget. From my discussions, it will be, and I'm confident that it will be, but for help right here, right now for Station 13, we've made some good advancements for them with an additional rescue vehicle, et cetera, but they don't need incremental changes. They don't need Band-Aids. They need comprehensive surgery out there in the North Tampa area. Looking at other areas, obviously Channelside, Councilman Goods has fought so hard for additional funding and assistance for Channelside. We need to see funds in the budget for a plan to, correspond with the growth that we've had at Channelside. New Tampa that I happen to represent, need a plan right here, right now for response times in New Tampa. 4 out of the 6 fire stations in the city of Tampa with the longest response times come from New Tampa because of all the growth and the fact that we've had all this growth and we haven't had corresponding infrastructure buildups. Obviously, East Tampa, Councilman Goods has done such a great job in advocating for East Tampa, continues to need help. Our friend Councilman Maniscalco fighting for West Tampa continues to need help. We're seeing so much workforce housing there. And who's going to care for those folks when it comes to their medical emergencies and their fire emergencies? South Tampa continues to grow, et cetera, et cetera. We hear so much about south of Gandy, represented by Councilman Carlson. So there's a lot there that needs to be done, obviously, whenever it comes to that. We continue to grow as a city. In the last decade, we've grown by 20%. And my issue is, are we having the public safety accommodations and infrastructure that keep up with that rapid growth? Everybody wants to move here to Tampa, but we got to make sure that as we take their tax money and they move here to Tampa, to places like New Tampa, to places like south of Gandy, et cetera, that we have the public safety infrastructure for them. And I think that's certainly something that's so important. One of the reasons I stress this as a historic budget is because we're getting, over the next 2 years, about $80 million in funds from the federal government, funds that, according to our president, we can use in part for public safety. The budget appears to do that again. We're going to take a deeper dive. But this also allows us to take a look at human needs, things like repaving, whether it's West Tampa, New Tampa, East Tampa, whatever it may be, South Tampa, et cetera, repaving, which is such a big issue that, the repaving budget in the city of Tampa is $5 million, costs $15 million just to keep up with repaving. These federal dollars can potentially help us some with that. And then lastly, one thing, in very short, if I may, I forgot about that rule. One thing really quick, if I may, that I also want to see in this budget is disability accommodations for parks. I believe I got to check up that I made a motion to come up in September on the administration's plans for disability accommodations for parks. We're building a All Abilities Park in East Tampa. We're building one in New Tampa, but we want to make sure that every single park in the city of Tampa has accessible playground equipment for all children, regardless of disability, autism, et cetera, Saved by the bell. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Maniscalco, you recognized.
Thank you very much, and I absolutely agree with Councilman Vieira regarding public safety, regarding the fire stations in question and whatnot. That's absolutely top priority. So I've been here about a little over 6 years, and I was thinking about, these last 6 years and major projects that were voted on and milestones from this administration, the past administration, and I was supportive of almost everything except a millage increase in one budget year. And when I say everything, one of the first real big votes by dollar amount was the $251 million to address our stormwater and flooding. That was something that I voted for. I know the previous administration, they really wanted that, and rightfully so, in order to combat the flooding and the aging infrastructure in our system. Fast forward, with that same administration, Julian Lane Park, $36 million. I voted to support that. That had the support of many in West Tampa, many in the community, and it's a beautiful park, a wonderful investment along our riverfront. And fast forward to this administration with the PIPES program. I supported that in the billions of dollars, which is historical. And again, a necessity. So I've been very supportive of very important projects in the time that I've been here, and I'm glad that I took those votes because, you know, we see the investment and we see the rewards from those. But the reason I say that is, you know, I've always tried to vote for what I think is the right thing. And I really don't ask for much, and I haven't asked for much in the past, but one project that's in my district, beyond paving the roads, beyond building the sidewalks, which we are addressing in this budget, is Villa Brothers Park in West Tampa. Villa Brothers Park, they did an analysis back in 2018. It was $2 million for the entire park master plan. Up until now, every budget has had a little bit of money. I believe it's just under $500,000 that's been allocated, maybe around $400,000. But I would like to see, perhaps spread over this budget year and next budget year, the remaining $1.5, $1.6 million to come to fruition within the next 24 months or so. So this budget and then the next budget, so we can see it completed. And the reason I asked for, I don't want to ask for it all at once because, you know, it's a big ask. But, you know, 5 of the 7 Villa brothers have passed away. This park was initially dedicated in 2005 when all 7 of the Villa brothers were alive. And time is of the essence. And I say that because, you know, 5 of the 7 have passed away. Some of their spouses are still alive. We all know Mrs. Hector Villa, Martha Villa. 2 of the brothers are alive. But I'd like to see this park be completed while those that are still with us and can witness it and see this, because the Villa brothers are very special to the city of Tampa. 7 brothers that served in different capacities in the armed forces, in the military. And that's, you know, I think we all understand the importance. I know we have many parks throughout the city, and a lot of them have, you know, received that and those, you know, notable investments. I mentioned Julian Lane because I was here for that vote, and that was $36 million. A couple years before, I know Councilman Dingfelder was here, was for Curtis Hickson. That was another expensive project, Waterworks Park, right before I got elected. So asking for the remainder of this money, which I calculate $1.5, $1.6 million to complete this within the next, this year and next year, I think is a minor ask. I'd like to see it completed again. I want those that are still with us to be able to witness that and to enjoy that park. So I know we have federal money coming in between this year and next year, a large amount. I believe that money can be allocated towards this endeavor. It's not a lot of money, and I hope that once we get to the September budget hearings, if we need to amend the budget or however it is we go about that, we include that, you know, those funds in the budget. Thank you very much.
I have questions on that, and I don't know if we have anybody from staff, from Parks and Rec, that may be on, because I'm confused. I know we keep doing the work on Villa Brothers. I'm just confused on why hasn't that been put in one bundle to see what that's going to cost at one spot. I think we just did the bathrooms out there with the groundbreaking our first year, and I guess, you know, the dog park and then the walk around trail. And have you, Mr. Maniscalco, is that the number figure they're giving you, 1.5 to now complete all the projects that need to be done to Villas Brothers?
The dollar amount that I received in 2018 was $2 million for everything. There was a master plan, you could say, for the entire Villa Brothers Park to complete it, meaning everything, you know, the walking trail, relocating the monument, the restrooms. Now the monuments be relocated, the restrooms were built. We have some playground upgrades, but there's still a long ways to go. It's, you know, a lot of it is an open field. It's fenced in and whatnot. But if you look at how that neighborhood has changed with the JCC across the street, with new apartments across the street, you have new restaurants on Howard Avenue, new businesses going in, new residents, new homes. Villa Brothers is a focal point, a very, very important part of that neighborhood because, again, you know, we have a lot of families. We have a lot of children that are in that neighborhood now. It's all accessible by walking to a lot of those neighbors. But again, the importance of who the Villa brothers were. who the Vila brothers are to the city of Tampa, and being, right there in West Tampa, right there in a central part of the city, on a busy road that so many people travel and pass, I think it's important. Not everybody goes downtown, and the parks that I mentioned, they're there along the river and whatnot, and we focused a lot on downtown, but this is within the neighborhoods, beyond McFarland Park, which is another great park in my district. Vila Brothers is another very, very important parcel. So going back to the numbers, $2 million was the total amount. I think the restrooms and other projects that have already been completed, the restrooms were in the 200,000 range, and then moving the monument, that's why I'm saying maybe $300,000-$400,000 has been allocated. I'm just going off the top of my head. So 1.5, 1.6 should give us the leftover amount to complete everything.
Maybe that's a conversation to have with the Parks and Rec and the administration to see how that can be kind of calculated within this budget to finish the project. It keeps lingering. We need to finish some of these projects and not keep carrying over. So maybe it's a conversation before hearing time you might can have with the administration to see how we can tweak that to get that park done for the Vila brothers who serve this community. And I thought the park myself was completed, but come to find out it is not completed, which we need to have it completed. So maybe it's a conversation you need to have before the budget session, sir. But Citro, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I thank you very much. I will keep mine brief. I have gone to Chief of Staff, I've gone to the Mayor, I've gone to our CFO, I've gone to a bunch of people, and I've already made my request clear. There are 2 fire stations that are needed in this city. However, we also need what Miami-Dade has done and incorporate satellite stations. Those satellite stations can be put anywhere on any retail parking lot with a fence, an emergency car, and a trailer. One prime spot is at the corner of Nebraska and Fowler Avenue. Another one is at McFarland Park. There are parks in this city that need to be redone. Vila Brothers is number 1. But we can have all the brick and mortar we want. We can do wonderful things to our departments. But gentlemen, what really needs to happen is staffing. We need to have the staff available to run our city. The more people that come into this city, if we do not have fire, police, all the people that have been locked up in their own homes because of COVID made them realize how important their neighborhoods are. Walkability, the parks, bike trails. But unless we have staffing, I feel it's all for naught. My only minor request, a selfish request, is again for TBAE. Mr. Chair, I thank you for allowing me to speak, but I've already made my request clear to the Mayor, Chief of Staff, and the CFO. And those things are fire stations, parks, staffing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Isn't the TVAE was already funded? Isn't that a continued funded program?
I'm just making my request known, just repeating. Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
as you talked about FTE, I met with Kathy Castor today and our seniors. And, I told them that the city has been doing a lot with less. But we're getting people here every day. And the city is growing every day. And that doing more with less is starting to really hurt us as a city a little bit. And I'm looking at the budget here because some areas, they talked about code enforcement. We talk about housing. We need people to do the work.
Exactly.
And that's the problem we're having. That's kind of what I'm looking at this budget to see how we're going to increase the workers, because we need workers to be able to get things done in the city. And that's the problem I see. We've done a great job, doing more with less. But that has come to a halt a little bit, and we've got to be able to get the money and do FTE so we can get people to do the work for the constituents, because that's their major complaint now, saying that their services is being lax as days ago, and they can't get the correct services because there's nobody doing the work. Mr. Dingfelder,
Well,
you recognized.
if I may, thank you, Mr. Chair, I do appreciate it, Councilman Dingfelder, thank you for letting me interject. When it comes down to citizen to employee of Tampa ratio, then we got a problem. But let's also make this quite clear. We've had a loss of taxable revenue in this city during the year and a half of COVID. So I don't want to say we're having to squeeze blood from a rock, but we're having to be very, very careful on what we spend our money on. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dingfelder, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate,
I tell you what, Ms. Dingfelder, let me go with Mr. Carlson, since you were the maker of the motion.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
go to Mr. Carlson, then we'll go to you, sir. Ms. Carlson, you recognize.
Great, thank you, sir. And want to echo what my colleagues said. Thank you to the administration for working with us and listening to us. Around last week's meeting, the administration sent an email to all of us summarizing what we had said we thought were the priorities, and they got it right, so I appreciate it. Just to reiterate some of the priorities that our constituents have told us, and in particular in South Tampa, roads and potholes. We were hoping that Offer Transportation would cover it, but it didn't come through. And so we have a desperate need to fix roads. There are roads like Hines and Prospect and others in South Tampa that are just full of potholes, and people are complaining that their cars are getting rattled and broken. And it's like some of the worst countries I've ever been to. So I think we absolutely have to focus on that. Second, sidewalks, we've spent a lot of time talking about that, but we really need to get the sidewalks going, and especially to and from schools, and at least the ones right across from schools. Flooding, which we have money for, as my colleague mentioned earlier, stormwater flooding, but there, times that it rains, we get lots and lots of calls, and we desperately need task forces to go out and fix some of these key areas quickly. Parks, the problem with Vila Brothers is that there was a promise, or at least an expectation set about 5 years ago, that it was going to be redone, and it has never been redone. And so I would echo that it's important to get that one done just because of the promises made several years ago. But there are parks throughout South Tampa and the rest of Tampa, but South Tampa is like the rest of Tampa. Everybody thinks that their park is the only one that's messed up, and their road is the only one that floods, and their road is the only one that has potholes. But the truth is that it's all over the city. And I know the administration is doing a transportation study, and they're doing a park study, but we have all kinds of problems with the parks. And as people are spending more time in their neighborhood, they want sidewalks, they want the potholes filled, and they want the parks done. Echoing what Councilmember Vieira and I think Maniscalco said, I've spent a lot of time with fire rescue in the last few months, and the information I've gotten, the examples I've seen are really frightening. What we really need is ambulance vehicles or rescue vehicles at every station. The stations I spent time with in South Tampa, they have huge ladder fire trucks because they don't have other vehicles. They have to take the big fire truck to go rescue somebody, which potentially could cause traffic problems and causes wear and tear on those large vehicles. And we need smaller vehicles they can take out quickly. There are lots of health issues happening in South Tampa. There are lots of people that have heart attacks. There's an opioid and other drug epidemic going on, and they need the vehicles to be able to get to folks right away. Also, the station south of Gandy, which is serving that fast-growing area, also is a Marine unit. So they have to, when there's a Marine problem, they have to drive about 10 minutes over to their boat, which I boarded, and then they have to go out into the water. Well, that means that it's another several minutes for anybody to make it south of Gandy. And so we've got to, in this analysis that Ms. Vera asked for, we've got to look at the response times throughout the city, look at the implication of all the problems that are happening. But we need to make sure we're saving people's lives. This is not just about money. Somebody's having a heart attack, or they've been cut or injured. We need to get to them quickly. And when there's a fire, we need to get to them quickly. Just two last things that I haven't really mentioned before, but are major issues. We've got hundreds of people living in parks in South Tampa, and Chief of Staff has been working with neighborhood leaders, South Tampa and elsewhere, to find solutions for temporary housing for homeless people. And then we know we're working on affordable housing and other more permanent measures, working with nonprofits in the private sector. And so I thank them for those efforts. We need to move quickly. What happens is that if they move out of one area, they move into another area. And so we get lots of calls about that. And we get calls from people who don't want them in the woods behind their houses, and we get calls from people who want us to help take care of them and find permanent solutions. And so we are working with all those voices to solve those issues. Lastly, economic development. We know from TampaScorecard.com that Tampa failed economically in the last 10 years. Sure, there were things that went well. We had lots of condos and apartments and lots of buildings, but every other city in Florida did also, and every other city that we're comparing ourselves to also did. We can't compare ourselves to the edifice complex anymore. We've got to compare ourselves to the real numbers that other cities focus on. And in doing that, one of the things we need to do is bring economic development in-house. I think that other economic development groups around the state elsewhere show that we need a private economic development unit, but we don't have to be the main funder of it. We can bring some or all of that money in-house and hire a robust team. We know that Carol Post and her team know how to move forward with economic development planning. They brought planning in-house, and the more we can bring in-house, the more effective we will be at helping to build a robust economy. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Dingfellow, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shelby, you're probably better at this than I am. I'd like to put this on the overhead if it's still functioning.
It'll take a minute or two to get that set up.
Mr. Chairman, while we're doing that, let me start off by saying how thrilled I am that council is doing this workshop. I think it's extremely important for us to have a little more informal discussion of these super important issues before we dive into the more formal budget hearings. And I'm not going to reiterate what everybody has already said in regard to public safety, Vila Brothers. I'm totally supportive of both of those. Joe Citro, I'm not that familiar with the concept of satellite stations, but if it's a way to save money and still give good service, then I can see myself completely supporting that. Mr. Carlson, economic development I know is one of your fortes, and I'm going to rely on you to enlighten us on how we can do a better job on that. But I had a couple of items, and I'll just start with the biggest right here. This page came out of our budget book, and this is the ARPA money. This is the $80 million. Can everybody see it? Okay. Okay.
That's page 34 and 35, gentlemen. If you book, you want it, if you have it in front of you.
Thank you. And Marty, I'm not sure if that's showing the top of the page.
Yes, it's showing the top of it.
It starts with technology?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think generally speaking, this is where the city and council might have a little more flexibility than we do in other parts of the budget. And Mr. Vieira, I'm thrilled to see that that the new Tampa Inclusive Playground, which you have pushed hard for many years, hopefully is coming to fruition with the help of that federal money. Likewise, Mr. Goods, the East Tampa Rec Complex, I know that's not going to pay everything, all of it, but at least it's a nice chunk of money there. So that's the $3 million extra Parks and Rec. We all support public safety, TPD, $3 million. For various things. Mobility department, they talk about sidewalks and resurfacing, which I have a question about in a minute. And I assume that staff is on the line.
I saw Mike on the line. That's the only person I saw. Is there anybody? Is Dennis on there or just Mike?
Okay. Well, we won't go to them yet, but the one that I have circled there is solid waste. And the reason I have it circled, we all support solid waste just like we support all the departments. But solid waste is a little bit of an unusual animal, Mr. Vieira, as you know, that in regard to the fact that like water and wastewater, that this is an enterprise fund, okay? The reason I can support parking right above there at 3.4 million is because parking's a general fund, and parking has been hurting. And there's no other place for parking to get money except out of the general fund. But when it comes to solid waste, that 5.5 million jumped out at me. And I've been talking to Dennis about it ever since last week, just sort of peppering him with questions about it. And I understand solid waste, and he's going to get on in a few minutes and tell us, that solid waste has been hurting during the COVID, and that their funds are down a little bit. And even though it says something to the contrary on this page, what I've been told is that 5 million is really to make up for the deficit for the last year and a half. But as you see, what I've circled that 5.5 million, and I have an arrow going up to housing and community development. Housing and community development receiving $16 million. That's fantastic. Again, we never have money for affordable housing. And right now, the administration is proposing 16 million, which is it's not a quarter, it's about 20% of the total of the 81. But what I'm suggesting is let's take that 5 million and put that up above and make that 21.6 million. The need for affordable housing is massive. We all know that. And every single project takes, $3, $5, $10 million. Somebody switched on mic and I shrunk down our overhead. But anyway, no offense, Mike. Thank you. But the bottom line is this is the time. This is if I could have another minute, this is such a unique time for us. In my 10 years of service and Charlie's 30 years of service, Guido's 6, everybody's years of service, we have never had an opportunity like this with an $80 million infusion that's fairly flexible on how we use it. And I say strike while the iron's hot. Let's use it for something that really is going to make a difference. Because solid waste, and what Dennis told me today, is that solid waste, when they make their big move over to 34th Street, they're going to be doing a $50 million bond issue. Okay? So what's the difference if they do a $55 million bond issue? It's, at the end of the day, when you spread it over 30 years, it really doesn't make that big a difference. But if we take this $5 million and we put it up here to affordable housing all across the city, we can really, really make a difference. So that's my biggest issue. I have a couple of smaller ones that I don't even think I'm necessarily going to mention tonight, although I was a little disappointed that when we passed the PIPES program, I asked staff to increase the EBO staff to what it was during the pre-recession levels, which I think was like 10 people. Well, that EBO staff is still static at 5 to 6 people. So that's a minor issue. I also noticed that Union Station had no money dedicated, and I think Bill Carlson, you were the biggest supporter of Union Station, but has no money toward capital improvements. Anyway, my big focus is right here in front of you, is let's try and work with the administration to shove that $5.5 million and put it toward affordable housing, which will now have $21 million, more than a quarter of the entire 80 million. And then we can say we've really done something.
All right, we'll go round 2. Mr. Vieira, anything else?
No, in that list of federal dollars, I didn't see anything there for Tampa Fire, or is there some missing portion of that, or?
Well, that's a good question for staff to come in and tell us.
Yeah, and so I'll make that inquiry, if I may. Some other things, just looking at notes here. Obviously, for Vila Brothers Park, thank you for your leadership there. Councilman Maniscalco, obviously a very important park. I've been talking to the administration about that for a while. I always say that, I never like to get out of my lane, so to speak, but thank you for your leadership. That is so badly needed in terms of that park. It's the values, I think, are so important whenever it comes to city endeavors, and having a park like that that pays tribute to our veterans and to valor, and to use federal money for it, I think would be particularly poignant. I think that's very, very important, where values and recreation can come together and to teach us more about our history, including the Vila brothers. I think that's great. I would ask for a friendly amendment as well, if there isn't any, to put disability-friendly playground equipment there as well, if I may. I'd love to have that there, but big supporter of that, and
Mr.
and
Vera,
that's it.
if you have page 34, for the ARPA, it talks about 13.4 million for fire.
I was going to say, because I could have sworn I saw
Right,
it. Okay.
that says 3.4 million for the station renovation, 5 million for vehicles, and 2 million for peak unit services.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught that,
That was on page
Mr. Chairman,
34.
because I only put up page 35.
I was going to say, okay,
Yeah,
good.
and that was not intentional.
Oh, of course. Yeah, but that's marvelous. It goes without saying. And in terms of, moving those funds over there that Councilman Dingfelder talked about, I'd certainly be open to it. I like to look at the consequences of that, but obviously very, very open to it. Adding a few more, a little bit, 10, 12% more to a bond so that we can take care of a crisis right here, right now, I think is a reasonable thing to do. And when I look at this budget, I think the two biggest things that we're really addressing in this budget is public safety whenever it comes to fire, because we do have in many parts of the city a crisis. It is a crisis with Tampa Fire. A couple of weeks ago, there was a drowning in K-Bar Ranch, where a 3-year-old was drowning in a pond, and I believe it took Tampa Fire about 13 minutes to get there, right? Because again, 4 out of the 6 fire stations in the city of Tampa with the longest response times are from New Tampa. Now, there's different ways that we can fix that, from a new station to looking at a cut through to get to K-Bar Range from Morris Bridge Road, but that's a crisis. You talk to the men and women who work at Station 13, they are constantly in crisis. I mean, I always say this, those poor folks have adopted Freddy Krueger to be their mascot, because they go, if you work here, right, you're never going to sleep. You're never going to sleep at Station 13. And you talk to the men and women there, and they go, listen, we've been complaining for so long that we just gave up hope. I want this to be the budget where these folks, these great public servants, people like Clayton Weeks, the Tampa firefighter, who has done 9 years. 9 years he's done at 13. Most people, they do their tour of duty in Vietnam and they get out, right? Clayton Weeks has stayed there for 9 years, God bless him. I'm actually going there on Thursday with Joe Greco and some other folks to talk about what we're doing in the budget. I want to bring them good news, great news, because they deserve it. A lot of the folks here, you talk to them, they've given up hope. They don't think that anyone's going to go out there and fight for them. There's so many, and that area has so much poverty. You've got areas like the university area, et cetera, where 2 and 3 kids live in poverty, serviced by this area. It's a great combination of a gross disrespect for first responders, and then total disregard for at-risk, vulnerable populations that live there. We can get this done in this budget. So thank you very much.
Maniscalco.
Appreciate Councilman Vieira's words, especially regarding Vila Brothers Park, and what more poignant endeavor than to use federal funds for a park that is dedicated to our military and armed forces and those that sacrifice for this country. But as he said regarding Station 13, public safety issues in New Tampa, response times, when folks talk about speeding, when we get complaints, people say, put speed bumps. Can't you put a speed bump? And I'll say one of two things. There's no money for it, which I don't believe that's true. I mean, it's a speed bump. But second, it's, when, seconds count when it's a public safety issue, and we have our public safety vehicles, an ambulance or a fire truck, that those speed tables or speed bumps hold them up. So, seconds matter. But when Councilman Vieira said 13-minute response time to a crisis, to a critical issue there, that's uncalled for. If seconds matter, 13 minutes is death or possible death. So, public safety is first and foremost in what we invest in, because it's a life and death situation. And I'm going to be supportive of anything like that. But again, I appreciate the support or the kind words regarding Vila Brothers Park. And actually, Councilman Dingfelder in, that $5 million being moved towards housing. I mean, I've seen how the market is. I saw a social media post with a link to an article about rising rent costs and how we're some of the most expensive in the country, and blaming city council for it. I'm sorry, it's market demand. It's people that want to move here. It's not my fault that, through leadership, through a variety of people, the city of Tampa has come back strong. I mean, I remember how it was with the Great Recession. I remember how it was when I graduated USF at the end of '07, how people were leaving, friends of mine were leaving. Now it's the complete opposite. People they're coming here in droves. And in that, it's driving prices up. And somebody asked me today, why is everybody coming to Tampa? We're a great place to live. We're a great balance. Miami, to some, is overwhelming and too big. California and New York are too expensive. Orlando is very touristy. It's very congested. And Tampa's that balance. So we are a victim of success, which is good, especially, with everything we had to go through budget-wise 10 years ago and whatnot. We've come back very, very strong. But again, going back to Councilman Dingfelder's point about housing, if they're going to bond out $50 million, what's an extra $5 million? And this is not an irresponsible thing to say. Over 30 years, $5 million in a worthwhile endeavor beyond public safety, which is critical, but something else that is absolutely necessary. You break things down in life between wants and needs. These are absolute needs. These are absolute necessities. So I'm glad Councilman Dingfelder brought that up, and I would certainly support that because I've seen it firsthand how critical that is. Thank you.
Ms. Citro, final comments?
Thank you. The other day, a very good friend of mine was in the elevator with me and told me that I speak way too much, so I'm going to keep this very short. Police, fire, public safety. Our parks, and I'll say this 3 times, sidewalks, sidewalks, sidewalks. Staffing has got to be one of the things that we need to move forward. From everything from police, fire, code enforcement, construction services. Those are the things we really need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dingfelder, you recognize.
I don't think I have anything to add right now. I look forward to hearing some staff responses to the excellent comments that we've made tonight.
Mr. Carlson, you recognize.
Thank you, sir. I said everything I wanted to say earlier. I just look forward to hearing what the public says, and also cheers to Martha Vila.
All right, gentlemen, me and my colleague to the right, we did attend the Florida League of Cities this past week. And I tell you, a lot of good sessions, but the session that everybody was at was the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA. And I've got those numbers of those fine ladies and gentlemen who were there, who are administering the program, who actually know what's going on. And what happens is the Treasury Department handles those larger and medium-class cities. And I believe it's the Emergency Management Office that handles those smaller cities. And they made sure that the government gave it to the cities to run it versus the states to make sure we got that money to do what we need to do. And I'm going to tell you, the number one focal point for everybody in the room was housing. My colleague, Mr. Citro, was there. It wasn't any other issues. Most of the folks are using their money towards housing. Maybe some small public safety and maybe some losses, but even with that, you only can use that money for certain type of losses. You can't stacking money in reserves just to stack money and these type of things. They made that clear. That money has to be used on those losses now, and you just can't be holding money for these special type projects, but actual things that benefit the community that is hindering losses. We know housing is a big, big issue. Again, with solid waste, they've had some big budgets last couple years. When you look at now, everyone's right. Why would you give them more money when you're going to do a bond? That doesn't make any sense. So I would be in favor of scratching that and maybe adding that to housing and probably somewhere in there giving the rest to maybe to that Vila Brothers Park, to kind of balance that out. far as getting their needs. All in all, I can say that the administration did try to work around all the council members' needs. And in East Tampa, my big needs right now is economic development, housing. That's what the cry is. It's all over the city, and what I want to make sure when we add this money here is that we look at the city as a whole, but you also make sure that it's a balance of some of these other communities as well. Because I don't want to be saying it's a whole, and yet we throw a lot of money places that is really not needed and is really not going to change the look or change the outcome of some residents or some people in this city. We have a homeless problem. I just got a gentleman today talking about lockers, having some lockers, because some of the homeless shelters don't have lockers. So they have to try to store their stuff under trees versus some place that they may have an area where they can go put stuff in a locker and lock their person out, because that's their house. That's their personal belongings sometimes. They don't have a place, so they may go somewhere to try to get a shower somewhere, but they can't leave their stuff any place. They get outside the box, some ideas that can help everybody. And I told the gentleman I thought that was a good idea. Maybe there's somewhere, areas or different places in the city where they could have a locker to lock some of their items up, or some kind of warehouse or something like that. I know other cities do have a place in some of the industrial areas where they have it for the homeless and go and be able to store some of their stuff. I'm not talking about their whole house, but some people who are actually living on the street can just store just some of their personal life. You see a lot with all suitcases and buggies and all that kind of stuff, things of value for them that are very sentimental to them. So when you talk about housing, again, this is non-subsidized money. So we shouldn't have a lot of red tape about trying to get people's AC unit fixed, roofs fixed, assistance in getting some rental, assistance in actually down payment assistance. We shouldn't have a lot of red tape, because this is not subsidized money. This is money that can be used to do what has to be done at a quick fix level. So adding that and hearing all this, I don't want to be hearing about, we're going to make all of this red tape for people and then this money sitting here. Mr. Dingfield, I'm just being honest. We got to have mini grants. That Ms. Jones, who may need $45 to get her AC unit, and she's on a fixed income, why does she have to bring all these documents? A caving in house with a blue tarp on it. You don't need all this. You see it. You can have a few stipulations or what have you, but not all this red tape. I just had that conversation with Ms. Van Loan today with our CRA. Making sure when that housing board person comes aboard, it's for East Tampa, and making sure that we have these mini grants to help out some of these folks. We have to push this money out to the people. They're asking about it. They know about it. So, I'm appreciative to the administration that they've heard my cry the last couple of years about some of the projects I think that we need. It's no exception this time. They heard our cry about this ARPA money, about housing, and they did a great effort. But I think we can do a little bit more because that is the need right now. That is the crisis right now.
Mr. Chairman, could I tag on to
Yes,
one thing you said, and so it's been stated several times around the room, crisis. I believe that we've just seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to crisis. Yeah. The COVID crisis has and will exacerbate the housing crisis. Right now, people are protected from eviction, whether or not it was state or federal or what have you. The eviction has protected people in regard to rental and foreclosures. But at some point in time, that's going to change.
It'll change.
And when that changes, there's going to be an avalanche of evictions and a total mass shortage of housing. And if we don't get ahead of that curve and that wave, it's going to take this community down in a big way. And I appreciate, gentlemen, your support of this additional idea. I do commend the administration for the 16 million they tagged on there. But when I saw that additional 5 that we could get, I thought, you know what, we can use every penny. Thank you.
I know that Mr. Shelby, I think the Finance Committee for the Council has asked to come before us on September 2nd, I believe.
That's the request, sir, yes.
So we'll be making that motion on Thursday night in reference to them coming instead of the September 13th hearing date. Ms. Dingfield is right, and I guess it hit our cry, they should come before the hearing to hear what they have to say about the city's finances and what they've been doing. Apparently, the reason they could not do it at that time because they were still getting information from the different departments to put everything and analyze it together. So with that being said, we've had our discussion. We'll open it up for public comment. We have anybody downstairs, Mr. Shelby?
No, sir.
All right. We have anybody online, Madam Deputy Clerk?
Yes, we have two registered speakers. The first speaker is Stephanie Porter. All right, Ms. Porter.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We
Yep.
can hear you.
Good evening, gentlemen. I have this new role. I have to be careful of who I'm speaking for. But I just wanted to, I cannot speak knowledgeably about this new budget because I didn't get the whole thing posted online until this afternoon. I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. I may hit on the entire city items, but I'm just learning about the areas outside of my community, so I can't speak for Than yet, but it's coming. When I received the link to the entire budget this afternoon, I sent it out to the people of Than. I am sure that those active in our communities will have the opportunity to read all 981 pages. A couple of questions that I had about the budget that I have looked at today. Like I said, I didn't have it till this afternoon in entirety. Capital expenditures. I noticed that on the hard items on page 778, they quoted as funded by impact fees, but yet I look at other areas of the budget that should be funded at least in part by impact fees. There's no comment about that. And I know that we in SOG specifically have seen through a 2007 report that there were funds allocated for many of the upgrades in our infrastructure, and they're still not done. Page 805 in the budget. We would like to see where those funds are going and where they went. Capital expenditures for both brick and repairs and replacement and traffic calming devices. $344,000 seems like a pittance. I know that traffic tables in my particular neighborhood were about $1,500. That puts aside 83 of them for the entire city. Sidewalks. Now, after I wrote this, I found a little bit more money that was set aside for sidewalks. I'm still trying to figure out how the Inner Bay area got like $1 million worth. But I'm still looking, and I'll follow up with an email, and I apologize for being unprepared because I started looking for the entire budget on Friday morning about 7:30 a.m., and I did not get it until this afternoon. So you guys have a great evening, and I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you.
Next speaker we have is Jean Strohmeyer. Jean, if you can hear me, please unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, everybody.
Hi,
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thanks. Yeah, we always need to know that you can hear us. Okay, so I've just been listening, and I was not privy to the budget because we did not receive it. We all were bouncing around all weekend looking for it everywhere on every website, but it was not available to us. So I'm just going to have to go based on what y'all have talked about tonight or today. So y'all mentioned about city workers. You need to expand city workers. In other words, expand the government footprint. I'm not sure, yes, we do more. You want to do more with less, blah, blah, blah. But, we've all suffered the consequences of COVID and the financial burden of it. And for the city to be able to expand and not everybody else and all private businesses, that wouldn't be kind of fair to some people. The city did add $15 an hour on last year or whatever to the employees as a minimum. That's a lot of money for small businesses to pay. So, to just think about that when you start expanding employees. Roads, you're right. Roads, Hines, like Councilman Carlson said, Hines is a mess. All these other roads, the flooding in my footprint is not so bad. There's a few streets, But they have $35 million. They're going to be working on that with the ELAP project in the lower stormwater peninsula that has a lot of money, and that's not going to help any flooding in ISOG, just so y'all know that. Gadsden Park, there used to be a beautiful swing set in a park there, and they removed it. That was near the bathrooms. That swing set has been removed, and they put one of them crappy little wood things that's dilapidated and falling apart. So our people would like to have a playground, just a playground. So let's see, the sidewalk fund for south of Gandy, there was 158,000 that Stephanie just mentioned, and I don't think we got any of it, because our understanding is the sidewalk fund just goes to anywhere in the city where y'all want it, but not where the impact fees. It impacts us, but we don't get the money. That's not right. I don't know about increasing. Oh, first of all, I need somebody to please identify what affordable housing is. Nobody has been able to tell me. Is that apartments? Is it houses? Is it an affordable house? Is it an affordable apartment? What is it? Nobody seems to know, because that would depend on how we would want to allocate and where would we want that to go. So please define affordable housing. Let's see, moving funds. I'm not sure what Councilman Dingfelder was talking about moving these funds. I haven't had a chance to even look at the budget, so it sounds good in theory, but of course the consequences need to be run by we the people, because we're pretty good at attacking what you guys might find to be good, and we find out it's not. Crisis, evictions, yeah. I do that for a living. The landlords, though, you remember, are suffering too. People that own property and can't make their mortgage payments because they're not receiving the rental income, that's a big problem.
Yeah,
So
10
the
seconds,
landlords
Jane.
that have houses are losing them too. One more thing, can I?
Go ahead, Jane.
Can I?
Go ahead,
Okay,
Jane.
one more thing. I thought a great idea on the homeless lockers, like Amazon has lockers outside the 7-Eleven and stuff like that. That's actually a pretty good idea. I think we need to look into that. And that's all I have. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Night.
Jane.
That concludes the registered speaker portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Matos. All right, gentlemen, we talked, we discussed, we heard from the few folks that did call in. I'm sure we'll have a big crowd at hearing time, of course. We have staff on the line. I thought I saw Mike earlier, correct?
Good evening,
Ms.
Mr.
Dennis,
Chair. Mike Perry, Budget Officer. We appreciate all your comments, and we'll take it back to the administration and provide answers back to you.
What sort of time frame, Mike?
Again, as soon as we can go ahead and I'm not guaranteeing, but obviously before September 13th, the first public hearing.
Yeah, I think what we don't want to do is get caught in that corner. And you've seen it happen year in and year out. And then there's a lot of frustration, with council and the administration and everybody scrambling at the last minute. So if we could have some responses, within the next week or so, that would be wonderful from my perspective. I'm sure all of council would agree, the sooner the better.
I don't think that a lot of things that we've asked for or talked about tonight are unreasonable at this point. We have some extra dollars now that you can play with now. Those dollars can be used, and there are no restrictions on those dollars. I was at the meeting, I heard from the people who are actually going to be handing out the money and explain how in theory it's supposed to work. So I don't think there's anything unreasonable that we really talked about tonight that's real far-fetched. So I don't think it should be a big cry to try to make some of these things happen. Of course, we'll probably still hear from citizens on the 13th, but hopefully some are listening. We'll see this broadcast tonight. If they do have some concerns, we'll call in before we get to that time on the 13th. Or again, when we look at when the actual council finance committee brings us their recommendations and ideas and suggestions, and that still will give us a little time, Mr. Dingfelder, with them coming on the 2nd, to iron out anything before the 13th gets here, and hopefully we can get everything ironed out before then, and we won't have to worry about any going back and forth like we've done in the past. I do like the idea that I want to thank Mr. Bennett. It was a great idea the last couple of years to come to us beforehand and ask us some of the pressing issues of this council or council members in their district. I think he's done a good job of listening and trying to make some things work. And again, thank Mr. Dingfelder for having this workshop tonight, because that kind of brought some things out to kind of let us talk a little bit today, this evening rather. And again, I think it was a great idea, and I'm sure we'll probably continue this again next year because I thought it was very valuable. And again, we'll have the finance on the 2nd of September. Mr. Vieira, anything in closing, sir?
Yeah, just, one thing I wanted to, stress at least my view of what those federal dollars are for. For me, those are federal dollars that the federal government put in. There's that idea that when people are cutting back, that government should cut back. I actually don't always believe that to be so. I think that when the economy is hurting, that means that government needs to invest in people who are hurting.
That's right.
And that's what this money was for. Is to invest in people who are hurting. I see two big priorities with this money outside of repaying, COVID-related expenses, which is affordable workforce housing. The idea that if you've got somebody who's an LPN, a nurse, a teacher's aide, a teacher, a new firefighter, a new police officer, earning $50,000 a year, et cetera, they're priced out of the Tampa market. That's meeting human needs. That's what affordable and workforce housing is all about. And then taking care of public safety issues. Those are meeting human needs. So I think that, this is money that came to us to meet human needs. And I think that we, are making a real good aspiration to do that. That's what I want that money for. And I think we all agree there. And again, I do want to stress, though, to the administration, disability-friendly parks. We have to cut that deficit every single year in the budget. If you're a parent and you take your kid with cerebral palsy or autism, or you're in a wheelchair and you go to a park and there's not a disability-friendly piece of equipment there, whether it's East Tampa, Copeland Park, wherever it may be, right? That's an insult. And we have to cut that back 110%. Thank you very much.
Mr. Maniscalco.
I don't want to be that rich grandfather that the grandkids only come to see when they want something. Because that's how I felt these last several years. I've been very generous. The Julian Lane, the stormwater stuff, the pipes program, I've always said yes to whomever the mayor is. I've always supported those ideas. So all I'm asking for is, a little bit of love. And in that sense is the Vila Brothers Park, I would like to see it completed. Because time is of the essence, and I've already said why. And it's not a lot to ask for, and it's a very valuable investment and worthy investment in this community. Thank you.
Mr. Citro.
Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. But if we're going to see things completed, we have radio problems with TPD and fire, and they were supposed to be taken care of, and they haven't been so far. So let's hold the administration to what they said they were going to do. Again, parks all over. This pandemic has put us close to home, and where's the next best place to go when you're close to home, and that's your neighborhood park. But you can't get there without a sidewalk, and God forbid something happens, you need your first responders to help you. First responders, fire, police, we need sidewalks, we need more staffing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Carlson.
Thank you, sir. I said everything earlier, but I just add something that you mentioned a little while ago. Anybody watching this, especially if you're watching it after tonight, Monday night, please email us. My email is bill.carlson@tampa.gov. And I think you can email all of us at, Tampa City Council at tampa.gov. And call our offices, set up phone calls with us. We'd love to hear ideas from folks, especially accountants and others who know how to dig deeply into the budget. We have a budget advisory committee, but we always welcome ideas from the community. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things popped up in response to the community input, and I hope we get more input as we progress toward budget. But Mr. Maniscalco, I am so thrilled that you brought up the Villa Brothers Park. I remember, and I think it was back in 2005 when I was here last time, Mr. Shelby might remember as well, that when Mr. and Mrs. Villa and some of the other family members came in and asked council to name that park after their heroic family. And council was more than happy to do so. but that definitely isn't the end of it. It's just the beginning. And Guido, I agree. I think that council bends over backwards to try and get along with the administration and agree with the administration as much as we can. But I think that if we have a commitment this year and next year for that to finish the improvements that have already been slated for Villa Brothers Park, then I think that this council will be very, very happy. Gene, if you're still listening, I'm going to add to the administration's list to look into that Gadsden playground. We shouldn't be taking out something and not even making it better. So, Mike, if you're listening, add that Gadsden playground. And then finally, Gene, in regard to affordable housing, we could spend an hour trying to define it and what it means. But in partial answer to your question, affordable housing is not limited to renters. It's not limited to purchasers. It's not limited to trailer parks or duplexes or high rises. Affordable housing is across the board, at least in this community. So, if we can come up with this $20 million for affordable housing, and I serve on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee because you guys put me there. But if we can come up with that additional $20 million, it's going to be not enough money, but at least something really significant. And we're going to use it across the board to help as many people as we can. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, gentlemen, again, housing is our big crisis. I never liked the word affordable housing because it doesn't fit all. I never liked the word workforce housing. I know what a police officer makes. Most police officers have a spouse, so I know what that income is. I know what a nurse makes. But then you have some who are single as well. So I want to make sure with this money we're not just focused on workforce, we're focusing on everybody's needs. Everybody's needs. Not just those who have a professional title, but those who work at the Walmart, the Burger King, working on everyone's needs. That's why I said before, we go talk about the city, but let's make sure we look at those areas that we know people are really hurting and suffering, and making sure we can make a real positive dent in those lives and in the city. So I want to make sure, again, we have some of these programs that we can utilize this money to make a fast, quick impact. Because I tell you, when I put a new house on a block, and I look at the block, I'm like, well, how are we going to fix up the rest of the houses on the block, Mr. Dingfeldt? The house right next to it needs paint. The house right down is falling apart. What do we do about that? We've got to have some type of special outsourced program because our housing department can't deal with every situation that comes in the city. That's our problem, gentlemen. Housing should be a separate department in itself. It should not be conjoined with everybody else. It should be housing, and the rest of that other stuff should be underlined someplace else. Housing should be a focal point, just dealing with housing and not all these other special needs. And that's what happens. They're dealing with more projects and less people. More projects and less people. And we can't help the people that way. And I'm hoping that the administration is listening, because housing should be its own separate entity in dealing with those issues. And I'm telling you, this money has to be used for small mini grants to help people quickly. I always say at the city, as a police officer, we work what we call a sector. And in that sector, you have zones. You have District 5. District 5 needs to be set up in zones. That way you can identify, like I said, every police officer, every firefighter, code enforcement, any city employee who's driving your car down a city road, our solid waste workers who empty the trash every day for citizens, they see the houses that are bad. Automatically, we should have a pamphlet or a brochure. They get out of that car, put on that house. Contact this number. Or have a log in their car, in that truck, or write down the house at that number, be able to submit that to housing so somebody can go out there, knock on that door, and say, how can we help you? Take a photo of that house. Submit it. That is how we're going to be able to clean up these marginalized communities, some of these communities, to make them look better, to identify them. You've walked through this, you see what I'm talking about. Citro, you've been out there, you walk around. Louis, you've been in the communities. If you see it, you believe it. So if I see new ideas and new visions, new paint, people then begin to believe, they begin to see the hope coming through, their lives begin to change. We're a board that affects change of the lives of people. You have the administration, but at the end of the day, on Thursdays, the administration may be looking at a camera, but on Thursdays at that podium, who hears it all? Who gets the blunt of it? Nobody gets it but us. So we have to be able to be the sounding board. And I'm just saying, and I'm bringing it in for landing, gentlemen, to close it out. Housing is a focal point. We have fire, Vila Brothers, and I think we can get these things done. Mr. Shelby, any parting words, sir?
No, sir, thank you. Just a reminder, again, we have the meeting, we have the two meetings on this coming Thursday, the CRA, and in the evening, we have an evening meeting at 5 o'clock. Mr. Dingfelder, did you want that piece of paper back? And I will give it back to you, and I don't think there's anything to receive and file, I believe.
There's nothing to receive. Do we have anything to receive from? I don't think anything.
Is there anything, Madam Clerk, you think we should have that motion?
Yes, the memo from,
Oh, cancel it.
You got Mr. Randall's motion? Okay. Motion to receive and
So
file.
moved.
Second.
We have Mr. Dingfelder, second by Mr. Citro. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? We stand adjourned, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, I found out fast, mama, you wasn't what you supposed to be. You say your baby needs shoes. Tomorrow you got a brand new plan. You say your baby needs shoes. Tomorrow you got a brand new plan. I'm here to tell you right now, baby.
Actually permitted.
That's why we're here. It was not.
It was not permitted.
So my understanding is you don't technically need a permit for a fence.
You have to come
You-
here depending on what you're trying to
Right.
do.
So the issue is it was constructed and does not meet the guidelines at this point.
I'll take that under advisement. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Taylor, anything else?